5. Disenchantment Bay. Disenchantment Bay is a 10-mile stretch of water that sits between the mouth of Russell Fjord and the head of Yakutat Bay in Alaska. It was given its name in 1792 by a Spanish explorer who entered it thinking it would lead to the Northwest Passage, but became disenchanted when he realized that it was a dead end. It's surrounded by glaciers and large sheets of ice, and it's not unusual for these to break off and fall into the water. But on July 4th of 1905, an unusually large piece dropped into the bay and triggered an extraordinary mega tsunami. An overhanging glacier, which is now referred to as the Fallen Glacier, separated from a larger ice sheet that slid through the valley down a 1,000-foot steep slope into the bay. It was so large that it cleared a half-mile wide strip of vegetation as it passed through and generated a huge wave when it finally entered the water. No one was there at the time, but the size of the wave can be inferred by the destruction that it left behind. Tree branches within a half a mile were broken that were 110 feet above the water's normal level, while vegetation 3 miles away was affected up to a height of 115 feet. People at nearby Russell Fjord noticed the water levels changing by up to 20 feet for a half an hour after the tsunami was formed, all of which shows just how powerful it was. Number 4. Sea of Marmara, 1999. The Sea of Marmara is an inland sea within Turkey that connects with both the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea. As such a vital route, it's long been important for trade throughout the region, and there are a number of settlements along its coast. It does, however, lie above a tectonic line called the North Anatolian Fault, and this has been particularly active in recent years. Things came to a peak in 1999 when the fault caused 2 earthquakes, the first of which struck the city of Izmit and killed 17,000 people. The magnitude 7.6 quake ruptured the fault for 93 miles, part of which directly affected the Sea of Marmara. This triggered a significant tsunami that was up to 10 feet high above the normal water level, but because of the land around the lake is so flat and the unusual underwater topography of the place, this was more than enough to cause serious damage. The wave itself caused the deaths of 155 people and encouraged hundreds more to move away because of the risk of it happening again. Number 3. Indonesia, 2004. The Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004 was in no way the most powerful or biggest tsunami of recent times, but because it hit such a highly populated region, it was by far the most deadly and devastating one in modern history. On the morning of December 26th, a huge undersea megathrust earthquake struck off the shore of Indonesia and measured a magnitude of 9.3. This activity triggered a series of tsunamis, one of which was reported 100 feet tall and crashed down on coastal communities around the ocean. Towns and villages in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand were particularly affected, with no early warning system in place. The first they knew of the incoming threat was when they saw it coming. There was virtually no time to escape, and this is partly what contributed to such a loss of life. It's thought that as many as 228,000 people lost their lives to the tsunamis, and countless more were displaced. Studies of the wave have found that it contained the equivalent of around 5 megatons of TNT worth of energy, which is more than the total used during the Second World War, even if you include the nuclear bombs. The waves were so strong that in some places they reached more than a mile inland, and traveled so far across the ocean that a 5-foot swell was detected in Struisbaai, South Africa, which is 5,000 miles away. Number 2. The Krakatoa eruption. Krakatoa is one of the most famous volcanoes on Earth, thanks to the eruption that was heard around the world in 1883. That event was so powerful that it destroyed 70% of the island around the mountain, and is one of the most destructive volcanic events ever recorded. The sound of the blast was heard more than 3,000 miles away, and the shockwave it produced traveled around the entire planet 4 times. The eruption was blamed for the deaths of almost 35,000 people, but rather than being caught up in the pyroclastic flow, a large number of these were as a result of the tsunamis that formed. No one is sure how high the tsunamis reached at their peak, but it's likely to have been at least 100 feet, and potentially many more times that. When they travel across the open ocean, they're only present as a small swell, and it's only when they make landfall that their true size is seen. Unusually, however, the ones created by this eruption proved to be just as deadly at sea as they were on land. Boats in the water as far away as South Africa were reportedly rocked violently by the waves, and a number were sunk with the loss of all their crew. The Indonesian town of Merak was completely destroyed by a wave that was estimated 150 feet high, and a number of others met the same fate too. Smaller waves were also detected on the other side of the globe, even in Europe, and you just have to wonder how even more catastrophic it would have been if it had happened today, when there are so many more people living in coastal regions across the planet. Number 1. Lituya Bay, Alaska. You probably haven't heard of Lituya Bay in Alaska before. After all, it's in a remote region of the state and very few people live anywhere near it. It was, however, the location of the biggest known tsunami in modern times, and the event that took place there in 1958 forced a complete reevaluation of our understanding of the formation of large waves. It began on July 9th when a magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck the Fairweather Fault. This caused a landslide in which 40 million cubic yards of material, which would have weighed around 90 million tons, fell into the narrow inlet of the bay. The noise of this impact was reportedly heard up to 50 miles away, and it caused a huge displacement of water. The resulting wave is believed to have been up to 1,720 feet tall. It's thought that the unique topography of the landscape contributed to this, with the wave initially being around 100 feet, but continuing to grow in size as it traveled along the lake. Further research looking at the lake bed has also found that there's evidence of far more sediment than was expected, which suggests that the landslide may have released a second release of debris from a nearby glacier and released far more energy than was previously thought. It's lucky no one lived around the bay, because a wave like this would have pulverized anything that it comes into contact with. No other wave is known to have been anywhere near its size, but perhaps most worryingly, something like it could quite easily happen again, and because it was caused by a landslide, there will be absolutely no warning until it's too late.